morning, you're tuned into Business Day right here on ET Now. I'm Avan Dabash. A quick snapshot as to how the markets panned out today before we take you through the top headlines. Well, it was a fairly good day of trade. We did see a recovery on Dalal Street, but by the end of the day, it was a fairly flat close. You had the market breadth, which continued to remain in favor of the gaining side, 19,501. That's how the Sensex ends. So it certainly ebbed off from the high point of the day. And ditto was the case with the Nifty, which faced quite a bit of resistance at the crucial 5,900 level. We flirted with that, but then managed to end lower at 58.98, just a smidge below. But we get you all of the top stories for today after the headlines. Even as the government moves to settle the $2 billion tax dispute with Vodafone, the new Solicitor General Mohan Parasaran says the Supreme Court verdict itself should be reviewed by a larger bench. He also says that the Apex Court should review its order asking the government to auction the entire airwaves. Vodafone's India head Martin Peters says the British telco is open to settling the case. In an exclusive chat with ET Now, he also says spectrum refarming is a messy affair in India. Jet Airways tanks in the trade as a day after Etihad Airways chairman indicates that the deal needs to be revised. Sources tell ET Now that Etihad will seek more clarity on taxation and FDI issues from the Indian government before it signs the dotted line. India can't afford to change the tax practices on a case-to-case basis, says British Prime Minister David Cameron on a 3-day tour of India. Cameron also as New Delhi to open up banking and insurance sectors. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh says the government has nothing to hide on the tainted helicopter deal with the Italian firm. Breaking his silence on the multi-billion-dollar scam, the Prime Minister says there is scope to discuss the matter. We take it straight to the action that we witnessed on Dalal Street. A fairly listless day of trade, but nonetheless, we did manage to edge up into the green. For the broader markets, though, it wasn't that kind of a show. So let's just pull up the mid as well as the small cap index to tell you how they panned out. So they too tempered off from the high point of the day, but nonetheless, it was pretty much mirroring the frontline index. In terms of sectoral indices, you had the real estate index that powered through. Capital goods as a sector also did well for itself on the downside. IT and technology were weak. You had DLF, which emerged as the top gainer. Jayaprakash Associates from High Beta also featured itself. Tata Steel as well as Power Grid, those were some of the other gainers in today's session. Moving on then to individual stocks, you had the sugar sector as a whole, which did very well for itself. The likes of Sri Renuka Sugar, Balrampur Chini, Bajaj Hindustan, Triveni Engineering, all of those counters spurted very smartly. Apart from that, Unichem Labs shut up as it approved the sale of its manufacturing unit to Mylan for 161 crore rupees. So that counter, it did come up about 6% in trade, tempered up from the high point of the day, but nonetheless, a very smart gain. Some result reactions from Friday. You had Geodesic, the consolidated net profit came in at 9.8 crores versus 35 crore rupees, so a big disappointment. The net sales too were higher, though at 222 crores versus 170 crores. GSK Consumer also put out its numbers. The profits came in at 69 crores versus 59 crores. Top line growth was pretty modest at 709 crore rupees. EBITDA margin shrunk to 10.8% versus 13.1%. Ken India was in the limelight on the upside as it won the approval to drill exploration wells on the Rajasthan block, which will boost its output to 2.15 lakh barrels per day by 2014. Suzlon gained in the session as it bets on a debt recast, and remember its unit stake sale will be a turnaround for the company. Some of the big losers then, you had Jindal Steel and Power, which was a bit weak. Coal India was a big loser from the word go. TCS was in the limelight on the downside, and from autos you had Bajaj Auto, which was a tad weak, so off by close to 1%. Well, that was how the market action panned out for today. Time then to get in some market perspective as to what the view is for the markets going forward. Jyoti Vardhan Jaipuria of Bank of America Merrill Lynch sees value in banking names as well as the auto sector, while Mahesh Patil, fund manager at Birla Sun Life MF, felt that mid-cap earnings this quarter have been disappointing.
What we are looking at is some of the rate-sensitive sectors will start doing better than what they were doing last year. So, autos is one probably of our biggest overweight bets. And that's something where we see as the interest rates start to come down, autos will start to recover in terms of the volume growth, because volumes have been disastrous over the last 1 year. Second is we are quite positive on the banks. We think that's again another cycle which will start improving. Both the public sector as well as the private sector should do better than what it did last year.
The results which have come in this quarter, while broadly I think the numbers are in line, headline numbers, but we have seen some of the mid caps and small caps, the numbers have been disappointing, especially companies which were highly leveraged. I think selectively in the mid cap space, clearly we have seen decent valuation over there. But I think more importantly, I would say that in some of the cyclical sectors, market valuations have corrected back to decent levels.
How about the action on the F&O side of the market? Time to get in Navneet Saluja to see how that shaped up. Navneet, hi.
Hi, Avan. The futures closed above the 5900 mark at 5906 with 8 points premium to the spot Nifty, and during the day they saw a build-up of close to 11 lakh shares. When you look at the options data, well, the Nifty PCR again slipped to 0.93 today versus the previous closing of about 0.96, and clearly indicating there was a lot of call writing in the system today, and that has been a cause of worry. Again, if you look at 6,000 strike, that's added 13 lakh shares, 6,200 strike is added close to 6 lakh shares, whereas on the put side you saw built up coming in at 5,600 strike adding close to 4 lakh shares, whereas 5,800 strike added 1.5 lakh shares in today's trading session. And moving on to stock futures, among the Nifty gainers you had DLF, which surged in today's trading session after a couple of brokerages upgraded the stock. Also JP Associates saw some traction, fresh long positions seen in both DLF as well as JP Associates. You also had Tata Steel and HUL which did well today, and on the short side you had Jindal Steel and Power, Coal India which were down. From the mid-cap arena you had Havells and Financial Technologies which were down and about. Short positions built on the futures side. JP Power, Adani Enterprises surged today, long positions seen for both these two counters, whereas Canara Bank too did well for itself, long positions seen for Canara Bank as well. But if you look at the volumes, they were thin today. We did about only 88,000 crore of turnover on NSE by the end of the day.
Okay, thanks very much, Navneet, for giving us that perspective. Moving on then to the big story of the day, and that was certainly in the aviation space. Jet Airways, that counter tanked today by as much as 8%, this coming a day after the Etihad Airways chairman indicated that the deal needs to be revised. Now, sources tell ET Now that Etihad will seek more clarity on taxation and FDI issues from the Indian government before it signs the dotted line. Let's get in Sumit Chaturvedi, who now joins in for more details on the same. Sumit, what exactly are you picking up, and when can we see something conclusive?
Well, Etihad is concerned about many issues currently which are undergoing with the Indian government. The major issues are, first of all, taxation and legal issues. They want to be clear about the tax laws in India, and they want to be clear about what would be the treatment given to them after they come and buy a stake in Jet Airways. So these are the two important issues. They are also concerned about the bilaterals that are existing between the Gulf countries and India. The bilaterals are the arrangements for allowing flights between two countries, so they want to be clear about that as well. A new point which is coming up is that Etihad is also concerned about the treatment given to another Middle East company, Etisalat. That Etisalat had won 2G, had won licenses for giving 2G services in auctions in 3 to 4 years back, but they had exited India in 2012 because of the whole thing which happened in 2G case. So they are also concerned about the treatment given to Etisalat. So that's why by meeting Anand Sharma, who is the Commerce Minister, they want to seek clarity on all these issues. Well, currently Anand Sharma is in Dubai, and we are hearing from the sources that it is possible that Anand Sharma will go and meet Etihad people as well. So these are the concerns. Well, as far as the concerns about Jet Airways, Etihad wanted to have more clarity on the succession plans of Jet Airways. They wanted to have more clarity on the professional management in place of Jet Airways. So after yesterday's statement of Etihad chairman saying that the deal with Jet Airways needs to be revised, it looks like it will take 1 to 2 more months before anything concrete on that can be sealed. So, but when Etihad team was in India, they met Aviation Minister, they met Finance Minister, they met Commerce Minister as well as Minister for External Affairs. So it itself shows what kind of concerns they have, and that's why they meet all of these important guys, including ministries in India.
Thanks very much for giving us all of those details, Sumit. And you saw the stock which tanked majorly in today's session, seeing its lowest level since the 4th of February. India's new Solicitor General, Mohan Paraswaran, asserts that the retrospective tax law was a big mistake and should be changed in this year's budget. Parasaran doubts if the government can amicably settle the tax matter with Vodafone. In fact, India's second most important law officer believes that the time is right for the government to argue and persuade the Supreme Court for a larger bench to review the Vodafone tax order. Here's an exclusive excerpt with our policy editor, Supriya Srinath.
They must, because particularly in the light of expert committee recommendations like Parthasarathi shown.
Yes.
And those committees have been appointed at the instance of the PMO. And actually their recommendations I think should not be brushed aside or go waste. Therefore the government has to take a serious look. And we should also at the same time keep the confidence of the various investors, which have become quite wary. And we must actually only slightly tweak or make some slight amendments which do not affect vested rights or change the position drastically, what it was, or gives an impression that the government wants to override a court decision.
A settlement in India is never looked at as it is all over the world. I mean, all over the world people settle tax issues. Do you think a settlement will be possible?
You are very right actually. A settlement in India is actually looked at very, very suspiciously.
That's right.
Even if it has the seal of the court, like the Bhopal gas tragedy. Therefore, I think the government is quite sensitive to that and it can't readily actually go in for a settlement. These are disputes which have engaged public attention. See, some years back, the government settled with the ITC group of companies.
Exactly, yes.
In the excise matter. That was a different issue. There the government was getting lots of revenues. It was a midway house, no future litigations, etc. But Vodafone will involve policy ramifications.
So do you think it will be tough for the government to settle?
Therefore, it will be quite difficult actually to arrive at a settlement, what will be the terms of settlement and how actually the government can actually make the public trust that the settlement was quite transparent. Because there are groups which may say that having made a retrospective amendment, why do you want to go for a settlement?
On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think is the possibility that the government and Vodafone will smoke the peace pipe?
I would actually say as of now, it's at I think 4 points, 4 to 10.
That's a low possibility. Your predecessor was very keen that a 7-judge bench reviews the Vodafone tax order. He was preparing on that. What is your opinion on this? Do you think that order at all needs a review?
I also feel that in many respects the order requires reconsideration. We should somehow persuade the Supreme Court to refer the Vodafone judgment to a larger bench. And now I think possibly we have got a good opportunity now with the Andhra Pradesh High Court holding in favor of Sanofi.
Exactly, yes.
So that judgment I think is likely to be appealed to the Supreme Court. This will be a good chance for the government to argue and persuade the court to refer this issue before a larger bench.
Okay, that's an exclusive slice of a conversation with Mohan Parasaran talking about the Vodafone tax case as well as the SHOAM panel recommendations. Then moving on from one prominent voice to another, Martin Pearce, that's Vodafone India head, said that the British telco is hopeful of an early resolution on the $2 billion tax dispute. In an exclusive chat with ETNA's Sandeep Gurumurthy, Peters also says that the government may have messed up and maybe even wrongly interpreted on farming of telecom spectrum.
This is really an issue between the Indian government and our shareholder who bought the company. The company itself is not part of that discussion. I can only say, as the company, we would be, of course, very glad if this could be resolved, because it always comes back and it is always, in a way, with a negative connotation on the name of the company and the brand. So, purely as a company speaking, I would hope that it gets resolved as soon as possible.
The court has now indicated that the government should auction all the spectrum that it possesses. Is that a good move, you think, the fact that at least now...
Basically, that's a good move because I think, indeed, what happened was that the Supreme Court quashed these licenses and said, put it all up for auction again, and then suddenly the government squeezed in refarming, which the Supreme Court had never talked about, and we are basically thinking that it has never been thought through very well. But because of the refarming, they needed to reserve a certain portion of 1800 to give it to people who would then have to give up 900 spectrum. Now, the Supreme Court clearly has said that that combination, shouldn't have been made because this was only about 1800.
Right. So, the government now indicates that, it'll now probably have to have a relook at refarming as well, because now, like you said, they cannot earmark spectrum for refarming. Do you think now that could change the dynamics as well? Because now we're going to understand that auctions are likely to be staggered over two phases. They'll first auction spectrum only in the circles where there was unsold bandwidth, which is the 4 circles. What's your sense on how this could play out as far as refarming is concerned?
Well, I think the whole concept of refarming is not well thought through, as I said, because in many countries where they do refarming, let's assume operators typically have 15 megahertz of 900, then the government comes and say, can I please take away a few megahertz, I'll give you back some 1800, and everyone is fine because you still have 12 left or 11 or 10 left. Here it's a very different situation. They say, give it all to me. We only have very little, and then they say, give it all. That has a huge impact on the operators. And you have to realize, if you look at the customer numbers in the industry, in the last 5 years, this industry has added 650 million customers. The last 5 years. You can imagine that the majority of our networks has been built in the last 5 years. So if suddenly the government would take away my 900 spectrum, I would have to build a new network. I have to depreciate the network that I've just built. That's not fair. That is not, I think, how you treat a company that has opened the market, that has put billions of dollars into these investments, and then 5 years later you say, sorry, give it up, give it back to me. So we think that the whole idea of refarming, as it has been positioned so far, is really bad news for existing operators.
From one prominent voice to another, British Prime Minister David Cameron arrived in the city today for a 3-day visit. He will be meeting with government officials and Captains of India Inc. during his visit to encourage the growth of trade ties between India and England. Speaking at Unilever's headquarters, Cameron spoke on the need for transparent and clear tax laws. Britain's youngest Prime Minister said that there is a difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance, and that one cannot keep changing tax policies to suit individual cases. He also added that India needs to open its economy in sectors like retail and banking to further improve trade relations between the two countries.
There are some forms of tax avoidance that have become so aggressive that actually I think there are moral questions that we have to answer about whether we want to encourage or allow that sort of behaviour. Now, of course, some would say, we'll just keep changing the law to make the aggressive avoidance illegal. So I think there's a legitimate debate to say very aggressive forms of avoidance are not appropriate, and particularly in a country that's set a low tax rate, it is fair to ask people to pay it. Countries that want to develop, that need to have good public services, they need a tax base. They need to be able to raise legitimate tax revenues. And we won't see the sort of development we need in our world unless they have a good tax base. That means more transparency, more information sharing between countries, and making sure that there are fair rules of the road. Britain's an open economy, and we encourage that investment in. So I think in return, we should be having a conversation, which we'll have this week, with the Indian government about opening up the Indian economy, trying to make it easier to do business here, allowing insurance and banking companies to do more foreign direct investment into the Indian economy.
Well, with that, we're completely timed out right here on Business Day. Thanks very much for watching. Keep it with ET Now.